Welcome to today's episode of the Indoencers Podcast. Our guest today is a music producer who has used his expertise over synths in particular to help cultivate new sounds within the Indian music scene, and who has worked for projects involving artists like Srinivas, Chinmay, Shakti Shri Gopalan, among countless others. He is also a film music director, having scored for films like Dadla Prabhu and Suttakada, alongside singer Harish Venkat under the name of Madly Blues. In 2020, he came together with Playback singer Keerthana Vaidyanathan in order to form an electro-classical musical act called Kee and Techno, where synth-based arrangements are beautifully combined with more classically inclined melodies. To talk about his journey in music thus far, I'm extremely excited to welcome Prashanth Techno onto the show.
Thank you for the lovely introduction, and I've been following your show and all your content. I really like what you're doing, and so I'm really happy to be part of the show.
Thank you so much. That's incredible to hear. So we'll just start off on a general note, and this past year, as much as it has been said too many times, the past year has been a truly unique and abnormal year due to the impacts of the coronavirus. And there's been a lot of videos of you on YouTube playing covers and doing sort of various explorative works over the past year. So was this past year, given the circumstances, was it particularly a good opportunity for experimentation? And how do you reflect on this past year in general from a musician's perspective?
Yeah, so definitely, 2 years back or something like that, I had been I was working more on commission projects such as advertising or sometimes film projects. So what happens is I never got the time to sit in my room and connect my synthesizers and shoot videos or get together and make some sort of non-film singles or albums or something like that. And Keerthana and myself had been jamming 6 months before the pandemic, and we had been recording some stuff. So the minute we went, all of us went inside our houses when the pandemic started. What happened was I actually started using a lot of my time trying to edit videos, connect my synthesizers to my gear, accumulate more gear, and trying different stuff at home. And fortunately, we were able to do that. And so things like that. It has been more of a self-discovery kind of time, I must say.
Yeah. So with that in mind, let's sort of take the route that we tend to do on this podcast and take it right back to your earliest days, to your childhood. So definitely. Just on a general note, what would you consider to be your first musical memory?
I think, ever since childhood, my parents have been playing good music at home. So my first ever memory would be listening to, I think, Mukabla, Urvasi, all those kind of things on tape recorder, and being a huge fan of AR Rahman, Prabhudeva, and all those kind of things. I was quite interested. I thought I was interested in dance. Only after a few years, I came to know that it was the music and not the dance. After all the terrible dancing, so if I have to go back to my first memory of listening to music, I think it'll be the early Doordarshan tape recorder era. Things like Bombay, Kadaran, Roja, of course, Trida, and all those kind of things. Just listening to those kind of albums would be my first memory, I must say.
Yeah, and in terms of playing music, I've read that you started off by learning the keyboard. And I also heard that you basically self-taught most of the way. And you started with a teacher, but then after a few months in, you started teaching yourself. So I'm sort of curious, having only learned for a few months with a teacher, how were you able to know what and how to learn, and how were you able to keep your motivation up without a teacher pushing you on?
How it all happened was we had to shift I had to shift to an area which was pretty close to my school. Until then, I used to live far away, and there was I had never met anybody playing music until I was in seventh grade. So when I moved to this place, two of my very close friends, Ram and Harish, they have they were playing flute all day, and that got me interested into listening to music. They were the ones I was listening to. That's when I started listening to some sort of English tracks. My dad used to have this collection of Boney M, and I was trying to listen to Backstreet Boys, Westlife, and all that. They right away gave me cassettes of Eagles and Pink Floyd when I was in 8th standard and said, you should listen to this, and listening to Yanni and all that. So they used to play for the school band. So I thought I was quite excited by the idea of playing for a school band. So I went and approached Mr. Ravi for keyboard classes. So he taught us for 6 months, and then he had to relocate somewhere else. But luckily, he joined the school as a violin teacher. So he said, "I'm putting together a band, and we don't have a keyboardist. Would you like to play and all that?" So this was like a huge dream for me to just be on stage and play the instrument. So from then on, I was in touch with him. I'm still in touch with him, but this whole formal education sort of thing stopped. But what happened was a bunch of us who were in school, like it's kind of ridiculous that there was no social media or anything during that time, and we used to record like on cassettes, and like I can't even believe that all this thing happened in the last decade. Like, feels very old. But yeah, like connecting the keyboard, and but you can't even record on a phone and all that. Like I used to record into a tape recorder, and like side A used to be some film album, and side B I used to erase it and record. All those things we were trying out, and my friend installed like Fruity Loops on my computer and said this is sequence. So although like the formal education sort of thing stopped, there were other things like people in the school band trying to figure out what are the chords for this film song or like this English song, and we have to play at this ceremony. What kind of music should we play? And there was a lot of theater happening in school, and I had to score. I mean, I didn't know that was scoring. They said you have to play keyboard, and I used to play for live performance. So it was like just pushed into the pool kind of thing. So since there were a couple of like-minded people who were trying to explore arrangements and like how bands work and all that, it was a continuous learning. It started from there, and then it continued. Then I joined an engineering college, and most of the time I was in the music band room than the college classrooms. So until I came to Chennai, I think it was more about like having a lot of like-minded people around me and trying to figure out stuff together. And I was into some sort of production from my 11th standard itself. Like I used to meddle around Fruity Loops, trying to make some instrumentals and all that. So that's how it. I mean, I should say technology was an important aspect that kept me motivated. And also, there's no real world check when you do your schooling in Madurai. And when I did my college in Coimbatore, I had never met serious musicians in life. Like I had never met a full-time musician. So it was in a way like you think like you're making use of everything available around you. That kind of mindset. I hope I answered your question. Yeah.
Yeah. And you sort of touched on this, but how you scored for dramas and theaters and things like that. And I've sort of read that one turning point for you in your musical journey was an international competition you took part in Lucknow, where you had to score background music for a drama.
Yeah.
So how did this opportunity come about, and what gave you the confidence to push for a competition at the international stage?
Wow, you've made a lot of research. A lot of people. Yeah, so like there's something called quality circle in my school where like there are a lot of QC groups formed, and like they pick a problem in a particular area and try to solve that by creating different kind of standardization systems and all that. For this was an international convention for the quality circle groups all around the world in Lucknow. So they also wanted to promote arts related to it and relating these topics kind of thing. And so our school had to work dramas, that kind of thing. So we had this person called Mr. Rajkumar who had been like a theater director. He had been doing a lot of plays in Tamil and all that. Like a bunch of actors from my school worked with him, and they put together a play which was very it was not like the usual drama kind of thing. Like suddenly there'll be some sort of choreography in it. It was very abstract and live theater, or like live Tamil theater influence, but the content was in English. So I was just asked to play the keyboard, and he had certain ideas on how the music should sound. Initially, I was trying to play existing themes which would go with the drama. Then as a matter of fact, the director of the play said, "We'll play something on your own than whatever is there." So that's how I started doing it, and then that ended up being scoring for the play. The idea was to just play the keyboard. Then they kept calling me for like different events and like trying to score for like live drama and all that. So that's how the idea of like scoring started, I would say.
So were you scoring, like, were you just sort of improvising your own parts and scoring that way?
Yes.
Or were you coming up with larger scores and telling other instrumentalists what to play and things like that?
So for the first one or two performances, it was just me. There were no other artists. So then probably there was a flaut test and there would have been a vocalist. So it was not like a score sheet kind of arrangement. It was like a one piece or two piece kind of performance for the play, that kind of thing.
And you sort of talked about it a little bit, but you started music production in 11th grade, you said. And
Yeah.
one word that probably defines you as a musician today, if I may say so, is synth.
Yeah.
Synth is pretty much, a lot of the work you do is centered around synths. So
Definitely.
given the sort of predominance of synth in your career today, when did you start exposing yourself to electronic sounds, and did that come with when you started programming, or was it sort of separate?
Yeah, I think I didn't know that that was the domain or whatever. I thought, I mean, when you pick an instrument, there are a few things that interest you. Like, so when I started, like, the kind of, like, if I have to go back to my 10th standard holidays, the kind of sound, that's when I got my first keyboard and all that. I used to, like, go around different tones and keyboard and figure it out. And when my friend gave me, like, a copy of Fruity Loops, it was, right now, there is FL20. The first copy was a FL 3.4. It was, like, really long back. Okay. So, like, there were, like, cool things that you could, like, drag a loop and try to create a bass line. So those kind of arrangement concepts got me excited. But with respect to synthesizers, I didn't know that. I thought this was keyboards. I didn't know of the whole school of thought of getting into synthesizers. Like, we are trying to combine technology, music, and keyboards. You just tweak around a patch and play that kind of thing. But I was using a lot of synthesizers back then, like all the patches that used to be available on Fruity Loops. And I was also listening to a lot of Michael Jackson, Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd had a fair use of synthesizers, but at that point in time, I thought it was keyboards. And Michael Jackson music, of course, has a heavy synth influence on anybody who's like getting into synthesizers. And of course, I was listening to a lot of Yanni during the time. So this whole keyboard, less of classical piano, more of like tones, sounds, synthesizers, textures, soundscapes. I think this was like one of the things that pulled me into music production. I must say. So it started kind of like that, and started noticing the kind of things Rahman would do in his film stuff. Like suddenly there'll be one textural piece where he would have used some totally different kind of songs. Even like he had like from Roja Trida Trida onwards, during that time himself, he had like some amazing synth soundscapes in his songs. So I didn't recognize them particularly as synth music. I thought this is the music I like, that kind of thing.
How much did you incorporate the sort of production side of your exposure to music into the band culture? Were they sort of separate? Did you keep the stuff in the band very much, like keyboard, or did you incorporate some of the more synth-based sounds as well?
Yeah, it's a very good question, because for until I finished college, I was playing in school and college bands, which was more like playing film song covers, or it would be like playing at a music college competition kind of thing, where we would cover Guns N' Roses, Pink Floyd, that kind of thing. It was very, very less, but 80% it was like trying to get the film structure right. Majorly picking. I used to like play in sometimes in orchestra and all those kind of things. Orchestra as in like the light music orchestra, those kind of things, trying to play Ilayaraja songs. It was mostly like, I would say I've learned most of my music theory by covering Raja and Rahman songs. Okay, so like
it's a good place to learn theory. I can vouch for that.
Yeah. So it was like we were just pushed into it, and like we have a show coming up, that kind of thing. So for a very long time, my interaction with synthesizers used to be me inside my hostel room, or whenever I used to come back home, trying to connect to Fruity Loops. And I was actually using Fruity Loops and making music for about 6-7 years without a keyboard. It used to be just the computer with mouse and the typing keyboard. And then playing keyboard was separate. I never tried replicating any synth thing there. It was just like piano, EP, or like maybe pads, that kind of thing. So for a very long time, it was trying to get the film songs right, or sometimes we used to come with our own compositions and those kind of things. But in college, we got to experiment a bit, because our music club was given like a lot of encouragement in terms of time and money to get gear, implement resources, that kind of thing. So like we used to try things like connecting singers, the mic that the singer would use to a laptop and trigger auto-tune and all those kind of things we were trying it out in college. So at that point of time, auto-tune was like not used in film songs. So it felt something new. So that kind of stuff, or trying to remix old songs. So it was there as a separate component, but it was never in a performance kind of thing until school or college band. After that, there were like a few bands that were supposed to happen, and like you try out different kind of stuff. We started a band called Out of Syllabus. Harish from Madly Blues and myself, we started this along with some other amazing musicians from town, and each of them went in different directions. We wanted to actually play like world instrumental music kind of thing. And then there was this band called Bread Butter Jam that, again, we started. The idea was to jam only for bread and butter, like not have any other ambition for the band. And that also died eventually. So these kind of acts were more like sort of keyboard backing kind of thing than actually synthesizers. So, and yeah, stuff like that. So the whole analog synthesizers, like, the implementation of those kind of things happened quite late, like post, I would say 2018.
Yeah, and you talk about experimentation, and I sort of want to tie this into one of the probably the most notable bands you were part of, which was tech music at your college, PSG Tech,
Yeah.
where you
Yeah.
participated in the reality show Ooh La La La, led by AR
Yes.
Rahman. So I'm sort of curious, given that this is a reality show that's being streamed on TV, when you're performing in front of so many people in what must have been such a high pressure environment, was it ever tempting to reduce your experimentation and take the safe route, or did that sort of spur your urge to experiment even more?
Yeah, it's a good question actually, because like the minute I joined, like I had like some sort of decent exposure towards live performances from school itself. So we used to like go to school cultures, different school to different towns and perform those kind of different cities and perform that kind of thing. In college, we had this usual ritual of going to NIT Festival, IIT Saran, all those kind of things. So this was midway around college, and it had the influence of all the band members. It was not like just me writing music. It was like a lot of people like wanted to do different things. I don't know if you've heard of this artist. She's an amazing artist from New York called Rini, Rini. So she went. So she was part of tech music along with me, and she's one of the we both are the only like the full time musicians from the college band. All of them have gone to things that they like, mostly in the tech industry. So like we both used to that was like one of the biggest platforms. Like we never performed at a bigger stage than Ooh La 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 and all that, because if you're like from Chennai, it's totally a different thing. There's a lot of cultures happening and all that. Since tech music was a band that was part of an engineering college in Coimbatore, that felt like a huge stage and like a huge opportunity. And the sheer experience of like meeting other bands during the reality show was something that gave me an actual perspective of the world out there. I met so many people like Harish from Oxygen. That's where we met, and later we started Madly Blues. So that's where I met Harish first, and good friends with a lot of members from Oxygen. And then there were a lot of other bands which are still popular today, like Agam, Zinx, and so many bands were there. A lot of them are right now not famous for their bands, because those bands stayed for like a couple of years, and then now a lot of them are like quite successful independent as well as film artists. So a lot of people like that as well. So that music competition which happened in 2007 was a huge stage. I think we went till the quarterfinals or something like that. So just being able to participate and see the magnitude and like of artists, especially in Chennai, coming from Bangalore, some from Kerala and all that. So it gave me like an idea of the real scenario out there after being performing in Madurai and Coimbatore, those kind of things.
What sort of things were you able to learn from the other bands? Because I mean, the other bands were led, as you said, by some musicians that are some of the biggest figures in the industry today. I think Anirudh was part of that. So many extremely talented musicians. So what were you able to take away from watching the other bands perform?
At that point of time, until that point of time, although we were like watching like DVDs of like music festival Woodstock and like Pink Floyd live at Royal Albert Hall and all those kind of things, I had never seen like a professional band actually perform with like, especially when the first time when I saw Keba Jeremiah play with Route 10. I'd never seen anybody play slap bass before that in my life. So it was like more like going to Disneyland kind of feeling. So like I mean, there's so much to learn, and like at some level it was like trying to understand where each one came from, what kind of stories they wanted to tell, and the idea of fusion music and drum and like a lot of musicians who are like quite remote from the film music scene at that time were also part of the competition. So the way they played the drums, they used to play the drums, the guitars, and somebody had like I don't know what it's called, headless bass or something like that. I thought it was cool. Like I don't know what it's called. Like you just have the fretboard and the head is not there. So those kind of things are like, it was like totally new to me. And so it was like a basic 101 to live performances, how to manage a band, and like how to improvise and how to really perform and pull the audience kind of thing. So it was like a crash course almost for me. So it was quite a unique experience for sure. Very necessary for sure.
Did that sort of experience and realization that, there's so much more to music in general, did that sort of spur your decision to leave Madurai and leave Coimbatore and ultimately
Yeah,
go
yeah.
to Chennai?
Yeah, so the idea when I am from Madurai. I finished my schooling in Madurai, and for college I went to PSG, and that's where I was part of tech music. And tech music, I made like a lot of friends. A lot of my close friends today were like friends that I made in the music club, and it was like an amazing experience to be part of the band. And also like there was continuous shows coming in, so it was like a continuous workout kind of thing, trying to figure out chords for film songs, and figure out a list where everybody is given an opportunity and all that, like arrange for so it was a different kind of skill set development kind of thing. So when we participated in Ooh La La La, that's when I realized that I have to go to Chennai too, because like only Orkut was there during that time. It was very funny. So you couldn't like find these artists online and see what they were doing. Like you could never, there was no YouTube. It is really funny. So going to Chennai was like a no-brainer. So I was just contemplating if I should quit college and go or should finish college and go. So then I decided to finish college and go, that kind of thing. And then that was quite clear. Okay, I have to go to Chennai kind of thing.
And yeah, soon after you went to Chennai, you took your first step into the mainstream scene with Madly Blues, which is a band you created alongside singer Harish Venkat. So just in general, how did Madly Blues start, and what inspired the creation of this band?
I met Harish during Ooh La La La. So we were like, he used to play pianica even during that time, 2006, 2007. At that point of time, it was quite a rare instrument in the live music scene. So I used to be in touch with him on like trying to in terms of getting the instrument and how to play and all those kind of things. So later, we were in touch. And then when I came to Chennai, I used to stay in this tiny apartment close to this bridge, the subway in Tina called Madly Subway. I don't know if you heard of it. It's called Madley Subway. So Harish used to come there and we used to jam and those kind of things. And we randomly decided to call us Madly Blues. And we wrote one Madly Blues song, something like that, which has never seen the light of day yet, something like that. So that's how we started. And we decided to we had like a lot of similar influences, and we thought like, let's get together and write more stuff. And we wrote a few songs and we used to put out them on SoundCloud. And one of our friends heard one of our songs and said, I'm making a movie. Would you like to make music for it? And that's how we started doing music for movies. And yeah, so from 2011-ish, we've been like working together as Madly Blues.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, in 2013, you got the opportunity to score for Sattakada, which was a film. And the album as a whole really has a strong sort of live sound and a sort of band vibe. So how much was the composing process for this album inspired by your band experiences up to that point? And what was new, do you think?
Yeah, so during that time, 2013, what happened was that's when I was really excited about attending music festivals, live concerts, listening to a lot of indie bands in town, and like a lot of rock influences were there. Like there used to be some music fests that we used to go and watch bands like Black Star Blues, Indiscreet, and a lot of Coke Studio videos were coming out during that times. And also like this was something that excited me, and Harish was already quite active in the live band scene, performing with Oxygen and all those kind of things. So it was like like even today we really like to write songs for live performances. And Harish is a brilliant writer as well, so he used to write lyrics, sing, and we used to jam and try to arrange for like a live band scenario kind of thing. And that's how we started making music, and that is like our basic go-to process whenever we write songs. The director kind of wanted that flavor into the film, because we were not looking to right away jump into films or anything. Since this movie gave us an opportunity to work with some of our like dream come true artists and like stuff like that, so it was quite exciting to like being able to record live drums and all that. And so it was quite that way. It was we really had a great time making the album, those kind of things.
Yeah, and very soon afterwards, you worked on your second album as music director, and as much as I enjoyed the album on the whole, there's one song that really, really stuck out to me, and that's Yar, sung by Nandini Shekhar. And it starts off with this sort of melancholic mood and then goes really into the sort of rock territory midway through. So could you just talk us through how this song in particular came about, and like was it one of those songs that sort of evolved as you composed? It kind of seems like it listening to it.
So like we had like some basic ideas, like a couple of verses. Like we were like we used to continuously meet and have some ideas recorded on phone or like on a webcam computer kind of thing. So we had this kind of idea of like the first like 10-20 seconds of the song in terms of melody. And then when we heard the script from the director, so we thought we could probably this kind of mood or like this zone might work. And then it was like as I said, like Harish comes up with lyrics, and that is how like most of our songs start. Like then we just started jamming and recorded like a scratch version in his voice where he wrote like his own lyrics of the song. And whenever we get to perform live, we perform those lyrics. Like it's completely like an indie band kind of approach, that kind of thing. And we decided to like go to Bombay and record drums for this one, featuring Jairo Kavi at that point of time. If you look at the album has like 4 songs, and all the songs have this drum guitar bass kind of sound. So like there's one other song which has like a tabal nadaswaram along with it. Another song has violin along with it. But the basic core sound of the album, like a concept, because the director wanted to have like a Indian folk or classical fusion band kind of sound for the entire film. And one of the main characters in the film is a folk artist who performs with a band. So that thing was always there for all the songs. So apart from that, it was like getting into the zone of the film and accessing ideas that we already had in our jamming session, like library kind of thing, and we put it together. But like we really enjoyed making the track, and the track was initially not part of the script. We just wanted to express ourselves and do the song, and we showed it to the director, and she was happy to have it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and outside the film scene over the past few years, you've come together with various esteemed artists to create music in the independent scene. And on a general level, something I've noticed with your work in the independent scene is that it's geared more towards synths and electronic music compared to the more band sound that you had established with film. And you mentioned once in a previous interview that one of your biggest challenges in music was to try and do what you genuinely want to do and not what the sort of industry pushes you to do. So did that sort of play a conscious role in this shift between a sort of band sound to a more synth sound?
Actually, with respect to Madly Blues, we were given the creative freedom to do the things that we wanted to. It was more like both of us coming together, and what we make together is very different from what I might create in my room kind of thing. So it was a very conscious collaborative choice to take the live band route kind of thing. But when I was working for other music directors, arrangers, and when I quit my job and got into music from 2011, 12 and all that, I used to work for other film composers, like, arranging and all those kind of things. So in a lot of different kind of subjects were there, and I wanted to explore some sort of electronica in the, like, electronica in terms of, it is not like the films that I was doing. I was like happy to do the live band stuff, but when I used to work for others, I really wanted to push myself in terms of doing, because like obviously it's not like they didn't give the freedom. They gave me a lot of freedom, but the films didn't give them the freedom to use synthesizer based music. It was more like that. So sometimes we used to do a version like that, and later the director might feel that no, this doesn't go. The film is just pretty genuine. So those kind of things. And also another thing is, I think if you actually make music apart from films, you could explore many more things than, like, you yourself might not do that kind of music for film. It's not like somebody being not okay with that. Like if there is a film given to me, I might not take the synth route because of what the film needs. It's more something like that. The last 3-4 years, it was like, listening to completely different set of artists and, rediscovering a few other things. And that's how this whole analog journey has started. Like it's been like only like a couple of years or 3 years kind of thing.
Yeah, and one notable collaborator of yours in the independent scene has been playback singer Shaktishi Gopalan, with whom you've made 2 songs. And so before we get into the songs themselves, how did this partnership begin, and how did you get to know her?
Shakti was part of different bands, like off the record, and she used to collaborate with a lot of. I actually came to know her through the band Oxygen. She, like, the Chennai music community is like quite close. Everybody knows everyone, literally. So we used to like, we are very good friends. So we used to hang out and like listen to a lot of indie acts whenever there was like some small gig happening or like a music festival happening, that kind of thing. So that's how I knew her. And we had some sort of common musical tastes, something like that, to explore electronica and textural kind of stuff. So then we jammed, and yeah, that's how it started. I think I met her back in 2012 or 2013, something like that. So like we made music much later, something like that.
Yeah, it was much later. It
Yeah.
was in 2017 that
Yeah, yeah,
Begin released, and
yeah.
Begin has such a fascinating sound overall, and honestly, it's a sound I've never really heard other in too many other songs. So how did this all start? What were you going for in this song, and what sort of impact did you expect to have on the listener?
Yeah, thank you. But that song was actually made in different different periods of time. So it start. Initially I thought I'll make a electric guitarist track, just voice and guitar or something like that. And then I was listening to a lot of Pink Floyd during that time, and slowly when we started writing the music, what happened was like then we got into what the song should be about and all those kind of things. And Shakti had some fantastic ideas. We tried writing the song, recording the song and all those kind of things. And suddenly I started listening to more electronic music when the song started moving. So it was like a phase of life kind of thing. Like, so I actually wanted a very electronic Pink Floyd vibe to be like, that's the only thing I could think of. I was not trying to get live drums and organs and that kind of sound, but more like synthesizers and those kind of things. But it was not like, okay, I want to do synthesizer based music kind of thing. Okay, let me do my plugins kind of music with electric guitars and we were happy to have Josh Markraj, who is a regular collaborator of mine, and he played all those like very Pink Floydish. I have like this huge influence of psychedelic rock and electronica mixed kind of thing. So it was like, and also I was making really happy music for films and ads and all those kind of things. So I wanted to like get out of the comfort zone. And yeah. And Shakti had like amazing ideas. So yeah, we had like a good time collaborating and writing the song together.
In both songs that you've worked on, Begin and Wake Up.
Wake Up. Yeah.
There's a real like contrast between, parts of the song where it's sort of minimalistic and then parts where it builds up. And with the very little experience that I have in like making music, when you have that kind of progression, for me, I find it very difficult to sort of cut down on the dense parts, because I get the feeling that, if it's supposed to be a large sound, as you're working on it, your ears start to get used to the large sound. So then you want to make it larger and larger and just add a bunch more instruments, and you just keep adding unnecessary layers. How were you able to navigate that and make sure you found the right balance in the parts where you wanted a dense sound?
So at that point of time, not now, like when we made the track, I used to like keep adding layers and then removing them. So it's like the minimal parts, whatever you're hearing, probably I would have removed a few layers. And at some level, like it is also a lot when you're like writing music with someone else, that collective sensibility comes into the picture. So that way we had like common tastes and we wanted to go a bit minimal here, and certain sections we really wanted to like. There's in a weird way there is an interlude kind of structure, but there's no interlude. So the interlude kind of portions are where like the beats up, those kind of things. That's actually like a very Indian structure if you look at it. The song starts with just like a guitar kind of thing, and then rhythms kick in and during the interlude, and then they go off. We tried continuing them, those kind of things. So in a very like in terms of adding rhythms was the major difference thing for the song, where we should have the rhythms kind of thing. So yeah, it was something like that, but I'm happy that you noticed that.
I mean, do you do certain things during the compositional process to make sure that your ears don't start fooling you in any way? Because it can be hard while you're working on a track to approach it from a fresh perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that this confusion is going to be there even after you put out the track. So I think it's like I saw this interview where like finishing a song is like you deciding to stop to work on it or something like that. So it was like like of course there is some sort of judgment when you want to put the track out, and especially when you're making music without a video in mind, there's a very different kind of graph that you have. But whenever you do for a film, you make certain calculations and estimations based on what the vibe of the song is going to be. But when there's no video, like just let's record music, like then it's just experimenting. You try out like 10 things, 5 things don't work, and then you get on to the sixth or seventh saying, oh, actually none of the 10 things work, let's revisit it. Sometimes for begin we had like 45 seconds longer section, so we took that off because we thought it didn't make sense. So it's a lot of trial and error, I must say.
How different is it when, so in a film, a director will tell you the mood that the song needs and, you know, the certain situation that the song is going to fit into. In the independent scene, I mean, if you're collaborating with someone, I assume, you know, there's still a sort of mood that you'll be going for, but there's generally no situation that you're scoring for. There's no specific scene. So how much does the presence of that specific scene make a difference in terms of helping you understand what type of song to compose?
Yeah, that's a good question. So sometimes when I work with Shakti, she starts off with a vision kind of thing where she wants to talk about something in the song. Sometimes when I work with other kind of artists, like they have their own demo kind of thing ready. Sometimes there is no idea that is there. As we jam, that's when we figure out songs kind of thing. So for me, it is really exciting because I get to do the other thing for the films. So I really like the freedom that I get, not trying to cater to a visual or a particular theme. Like we could talk about a lot of things when you write music for, like, not for films. Like you could take it, you could experiment basically furthermore. And I also enjoy the comfort of writing for a particular situation and the director. Like when you write for films, I think the vision of the filmmaker is the most important thing. That has to take care of what the film needs and everything. So it is like if the filmmaker has like a solid vision on how the visuals and the audio interact together, I think that's when you could do a lot of interesting things. But here it's very, very different. Like it's again, for me at least, it's different for different people. For my workflow, it's a lot of trial and error. Like we might do a song and then scrap it and not release it. It's also, so that freedom is there in independent music as a non-film music. Yeah.
And yeah, speaking of experimentation and trying new things, one big sort of new thing that came about with you is, you know, your collaboration with singer Keerthana Vaidyanathan and the creation of Kee and Techno. And you've been doing this sort of electro-classical kind of work for a few years. You know, given how rare the sort of combination of synth and classical music is, did you ever have trouble in incorporating the right amount of synth in order to make sure that it's not taking over the vocals? And like, how did you find that balance?
Yeah, this is like, actually, that's a very interesting question, because until 2018, 2017, 2018, for me, I was working with a lot of classical musicians like Sri Ganesh Rajagopalan and Trishur Brothers, Karthik Iyer, and also with singer Chinmay. I had done those kind of recordings. And it was a lot about like, creating some sort of backing using, like, it was more the soft synths route. That's like the kind of synths that you'll already have on the computer. There's no like an analog synthesizer kind of thing. And so it was more about making it smooth, and like it was heavily inspired by how Rahman did use synthesizers in the 90s. Like, for example, if you listen to a song like Uirum Niye or Thoda Thoda Malandana, you could hear some synth pads behind. So it was more embracing that school of thought where you have these textures to support the music, and there'll be like a veena playing on or a flute playing on top of that. So the job is more like a keyboardist kind of role. But 2018 and 2019, I got to, like, I basically wanted to, I was getting bored of things that I was making with Indian music, and I wanted to like try and do other things. So I had done a production with Keerthana for her YouTube channel, this adaptation of this song called Nanoru Vilayattu Bommai. Yeah. So when I did that, I was trying to, like play around a lot of textures, and somehow like we did not use any Indian instruments in the arrangement. So that got me thinking. Like a lot of my friends said, do you want to try it without, because what happens is, if you add a ganjira on top of that and then add a veena and flute, this whole synth music becomes like a backing. So then it's like approaching like a film song. So just leaving it there was like something, some of my friends asked me, do you want to try something like that? So I just tried something like that. That was happening. And I got to travel a bit, and I got to watch a lot of live acts who, I mean, they were using synthesizers, like, and attended a few workshops in the US and also a bit in London. And I got to see how they integrate analog synthesizers into their music, their workflow. There were different kind of artists. There was like a funk band, jazz band, and there was like a classical artist trying to integrate Ableton. So like watching all these kind of gigs have gave me a totally different idea of synthesizers. Like one of my major influences in this aspect was, I would say, Oliver Arnolds. So he is an Icelandic, like an instrumental composer. I mean, he has been trying to combine a lot of Western classical with synthesizers without a pop approach. Like it's not the EDM or like pop or like dance music kind of approach. It's very sort of meditative. And I watched this gig in New York where there was like a string quartet and he was playing like a live piano and there were like synthesizers, textures running all around. And I found that very fascinating. So I just wanted to try that kind of contemplative, ambient, analog synthesizer kind of approach for Indian classical music with a totally different context. Like here, like the lyrics and melody are something else, and there's not instrumental music, and so that just got me thinking. That was just playing in my mind. So later, and I was listening to a lot of artists based out of the Nordic countries, Germany, who are making like amazing synthesizer-based music, but it was not the music that you would listen to it in a club. It was to give like a really basic example. It was more like the Interstellar score kind of electronic music. So that kind of textural ambient music, like that kind of opened several playlists for me to listen to, and I just stopped listening to a lot of artists that I used to listen until then. So it was like finding new artists and then figuring out how they perform, and they're like a project breakdown on like YouTube saying this is how we did it. So it was getting into like new wave of thoughts and process kind of thing to arrive at a sound like this. And then I did a gig with Keerthana in 2019 at the Living Room Kacheri in Bangalore. So at that point of time, I had like actually 3 months before that gig, I had traveled to Miami to watch the Ground Up Music Festival. So there I saw Snarky Puppy using Prophet, and I was like totally blown away by the sounds of Prophet and everything. And I was talking to a few synth nerd friends of mine. They were like, you should get a Prophet and explore and all that. So then I got this synthesizer called Prophet. But the history of Prophet is that this was a synthesizer that was used in Pink Floyd, Michael Jackson, and the early 80s music that I used to like when I was in school. I didn't know this is analog synthesis. I thought it was a keyboard, that kind of thing. So that kind of change of mindset happened only in 2018, 2019 kind of thing. And while preparing for the gig, I tried to integrate these kind of synthesizer sounds along with classical with a very meditative kind of approach. And that's how Kee and Techno started. And Keerthana and myself, we've been friends for the last few years, and we really enjoy playing music together. So we thought we should try it out and start like a live act. And we thought in 2020 we'll do a lot of live performances, and clearly all of us are sitting at home.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of the work that you put out with Kee and Techno is very experimental. I was listening to Chandra Jyoti, and that sort of reminded me of like 20th century music, which is denounced as crazy or insane. Like do you like trip sounds and things like that? Was there ever the worry that will people accept this, or will the feedback be positive?
Actually, we when we performed at the concert in Bangalore, there's another track which we put out. It's called Gayathi. So we did a minimal version of Gayathi at that gig where we were trying arpeggios and like trying to add some filters to alaps and all those kind of things. I mean, as a backing to alaps and those kind of things. So we thought we were very excited by doing that, and the audience also seemed to be excited. So we thought like, okay, we should try out. That concert was more like a huge confidence boost in terms of, okay, we have to do a project. We shouldn't stop with one gig. We have to do more things, that kind of thing. And so we just went to the studio, 20 dB, and it was more like Avinash was recording the vocals and I had connected my synthesizers. It was like an empty project. There was no arrangement. So I connected my synths and she was performing there, and we recorded both together in certain parts. And then I took it home and then worked on it for a few days, and that's how it came. But the major inspiration to do something like that, I would actually say those are the sounds of the synthesizers, which are very special and unique. Like if I have to do the same thing with a plugin on the computer, I wouldn't think like that. There's no doubt that digital plugins are quite amazing. I don't think analog is better than digital or all those kind of things. But analog synthesizers influence you to make music in a certain direction which you wouldn't make otherwise. And for me, that is very special.
Was this sort of the creation of all of these songs very improvisational, or was it more structured, would you say?
So each song is a bit different. I would say among the tracks that we had put out, Gayathi and Chandra Jyoti, this is Bright Side of the Moon, were very improvisational, like, while jamming for a gig or something like that, and that kind of thing. The first song that we put out has been composed by a very good friend of ours, B Prasanna BP. So he's a fantastic musician, and he has mixed a few of our songs, most of our songs as well. So there we had him compose the main melody of the song, and then we went into the studio trying to perform and improvise that and record it. So he was part of the entire process, kind of thing. So the idea is to like get into like a different kind of songwriting scenarios and explore. But we recently put out a track called Tunai, where we had the entire structure and everything ready before we went to the studio, kind of thing. So, but while she was singing in front of the mic, I would play like some textures, and those things were also recorded. So Avinash and 20dB like played a important role in capturing those performances, and they also gave me a copy of that. I've written a lot of things that I played while she sang and tried to build a track around that, and so that kind of thing.
So we've talked a lot about your journey thus far, and clearly, it's been something that's gone through so many genres and so many different experiences. So looking to the future, what future releases can we expect from you, and what are you looking to work on?
Great. So, like off late, I've been quite interested in making instrumental music as well. So I recently put out a track called Tea, which I wrote with Vedant, and looking to explore a lot of ambient instrumental music, as well as I'm actually working on a song with a songwriter called Asha Sriram. So this is a track where like she has written the song in English, and I produced the music, and we jammed together and made this song. So I am looking to actually collaborate with different kind of instrumentalists, songwriters, artists, and co-write and put out music. So that would be one thing which is something I started like very recently. I would say in 2021 kind of thing. So, and a lot of collaborations, like artists from different cultures and genres, and trying to like remote collaborations, those kind of things. And then as part of Maddie Blues, we looking to release music for a film that might I mean, we are looking to complete the album, and there's a movie that might come up this year, and those kind of things. And with Magic Blues, we've been like constantly scoring music for advertisements for the last few years. So that's been going on. And as part of Kee and Techno, we have a few plans to start performing first. So we have to really wait that scene to open. And we have been jamming and writing more music. So those kind of things. And then, yeah, so a lot of ideas like this. But let's see. Yeah, this is what I have in my mind, like right now. So to explore more, let's see.
Given that you'd sort of gone to countries like the US and England, and you'd been inspired by musicians from outside India as well, do you have any ambition or willingness to collaborate with artists outside India as well?
Yeah, so it has started a bit actually. I didn't meet them during the fest, but through Instagram, for example, I put out this track called Tea, which I wrote with Vedant. It's like a charango ambient kind of piece for which I collaborated with this Grammy-winning viola player from New York. His name is Nathan Schramm. He's part of this phenomenal quartet called the Ataka Quartet. So so he recorded from there and sent it, and then we for one of our upcoming films, we got to work with the Macedonia Orchestra based out of Macedonia. So those kind of things are happening. And for Kee and Techno, we recently mastered one of our songs and some of our songs at Abbey Road, London. So it's actually becoming very comfortable right now to collaborate with people outside your comfort zone or like cultural zone or whatever, because like we are in the era of social media, so it's everybody's just a ping away. I mean, we don't live in the same country, that kind of thing. So that has opened a lot of there are a lot of like even for this track T, I got the illustration done by this phenomenal artist called Irina from Cambridge, UK. So things like that are happening, and even recently I recorded again strings and cello from New York. So those things are slowly starting up, and actually that is something that I'm looking to explore, like more. Like there are some phenomenal artists here which I get to work with, and this is like home and all that. I would also like to go out and work with different kind of artists and co-write music or probably produce with them or something like that. So that's something that I'm really looking forward to. But during the pandemic, it has been even more contextually relevant to ping people and trying to work with them, kind of thing.
All right, that sort of brings us to the end, but with every podcast, I always end it with one final question. And
Sure.
so I'm going to throw that question to you as well. And that
Yeah.
question is, what's on your playlist right now?
Jacob Collier.
I'm with you there.
Yeah. So I'm going to just open Spotify and see what are my recently played songs. So I got introduced to this artist called John Bellion yesterday. So I've been listening to John Bellion a little bit, not much. I mean, I had heard his collaboration with Zed. He's pretty cool. But a lot of Jacob Collier is something that I've been listening. I mean, I watched him live when he performed here. Aurora, and then there's this artist called Malika Tirolen. She's the lead singer for the band Bukante, and those kind of things. And yeah, what else? Lizzie McAlpine. She's a songwriter based out of UK and the US. I don't know where she's from actually. So I think she's from UK. So Lizzie McAlpine and Becca Stevens. So yeah, and a lot of Oliver Arnolds, as I said, FKJ. Yeah, and also the recent Enjoy Me that I really liked, which was released by Santosh. Yeah, these are things I heard in the last 1 week, to be precise.
All right, then on that note, I think we will finish off there. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for the listeners for tuning in.
Yeah.
Make sure to go and check out Prashanth's music and his social media in the description below. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I had an amazing time being part of this. And also wishing you the best of everything for all the amazing things you do. So really looking forward.
Well, that was Prashanth Techno on our 9th episode of the Indoencers Podcast. And thank you to everyone that has tuned in. You can find us at the Indoencers, spelled THEINDOENCERS, on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Or you can use the links in the description. Likewise, you can find our homepage at theindoencers.wordpress.com or through the link in the description. Make sure to subscribe to the Indoencers Podcast on your favorite podcasting platform. Thank you once again, and we'll see you next time.